Alright, good morning guys. Good morning mga boss. So andito tayo sa Portland, USA. So ito nakikita natin tong pinakalumang train na nandito. So for today's video natin mga boss, mag scenic viewing tayo at sasakay tayo dito sa train na to. At syempre bago yan, mag-book muna tayo ng ticket natin. So kukunin natin yung yung open air. So kukunin natin yung sa bandang dulo. Kaya ayun, syempre kuha muna tayo ng ticket. At magbo-book tayo ng ticket dun sa dito sa harap, ayang Maine narrow gauge Railroad Co. and Museum History in Motion. Diyan tayo kukuha ng ticket natin.
How much money you want?
Right. Well, enjoy your time here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, please.
Oh, this is also that's the bathroom for. This is the shower.
So ayun, makikita natin dito yung history ng train, no? Ginawa siya noong 1918, built by Vulcan Iron Works in Wilkes-Barre. Tas 1918 to 1943 operated on the Monson Railroad na siya, which was primarily built to transport slate from the quarries in Monson. It also accommodated passengers, mail and other goods. So nagiging cargo din siya. Tapos may passenger din. 6-mile line run from Monson to Monson Junction. Yan, ito makikita natin. Tapos
Thank you. Good day.
You as well. Hello, how are you?
tapos syempre pwede ka rin bumili ng mga souvenirs na nandito. Museum na, shopping store pa. Yan, souvenir.
Yes, I'm gonna be momentarily. How many tickets are we doing for today?
Ganda nito, oh. Parang
Sure thing.
may to sa loob eh. Lalagyan mo siya ng picture.
Yeah, usually you're on board the
Yan,
train
tas
at
orasan.
2. It'll begin boarding around 1:30.
Okay, perfect.
How long is the ride? 40 minutes. So leave at 2, be back at 2:40.
Okay.
Any discounts we can give you guys for today?
Senior.
Excellent.
Tapos t-shirts, tignan nga natin yung presyo.
I think
21.
then cash or card with us today. Card. Great, that'll be 33.27, please.
Sa jackets ay 44.
Thank you. I try tapping to the. Sometimes it cooperates. Sometimes it does not. Try answer no here.
So an orange wine.
Oh, the gift shop. We're supposed to pick up our tradies before we go.
Yeah, well, that's before
Let's
we
see
go.
what they got.
So ayun, nakakuha na tayo ng ticket. Ayan, may ticket na tayo. So nagbayad ako ng $18.50. So wala siyang discount para sa crew, pero ayos lang yun. Ayan, ma-experience naman natin yung scenic viewing na nakasakay tayo sa isang train, na isang pinakalumang train dito sa Portland. Tapos boarding time natin ng 1:30. So meron pa tang time na syempre mag-ikot-ikot na sandali. Alright. Uy. Tignan nyo mga boss, oh, napakaganda ng Harley Davidson USA. 6 speed. Napakaganda, oh. Woohoo! Pang Road King. Harley Davidson. Ganda ng plaka nila dito, oh. Yung kanilang plate number, mayroon pang nakalagay na ride safe. So ibig sabihin, minamahal nila yung kanilang mga riders. Woohoo! Okay, so pupunta na tayo dun sa ating upuan sa train. Punta sa dulo para mas maganda view. Tayo'y mamasyal. So ayun mga boss, samahan nyo ako, scenic viewing tayo dito sa train. At syempre kung bago pa lang kayo sa aking channel, pa-subscribe naman dyan mga boss, palambing. This is Jim Laura Mix Vlog. And by the way, welcome back sa aking channel mga boss. Yeah, let's go, sasakay na tayo. So ayan sa likod. Kaya tara na, syempre. Mag-e-enjoy tayo, mag-e-enjoy habang nasa rides. Alright, dito na tayo.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good sir, thank you. So ayun, nasa upuan na tayo.
Ride. Whether you're a Portland expert or this is your first time here, our city has hundreds of years of fascinating history. Portland sits on Casco Bay, which is an inlet of the Gulf of Maine. Before the arrival of European settlers, the land had been long populated by the Okasiko, Abenaki, and Wabanaki peoples. The first permanent European settlers came in 1633, 13 years after the landing of the Pilgrims at Plymouth Rock. The area that we now call Maine was lightly settled during the American colonial period. Maine, originally a portion of Massachusetts, was granted independence. Fast enough. Work stopped on Fort Gorges in 1865, just in time for the Civil War's end. Even if the fort had been activated during the Civil War, advancements in port technology would have made the Granite Hill Port obsolete before it ever fired a shot. Fort Gorges proved to be more useful as a storage facility. Since its completion, it has been used to store everything from landmines to automobiles. These days, the port is empty, and the only way to get to it is by boat or by an organized tour. The most populous island in Casco Bay is called Peaks Island. Peaks Island is a popular destination for visitors to Portland, with plenty of restaurants, shops, and galleries to explore. Peaks Island is the big island in the harbor, dotted with lots of houses. Our train ride today takes us along Portland's East End Beach. This is the only public beach in the city of Portland. This sandy beach is a popular gathering spot for residents and visitors of the city, especially during the warm summer months. Swimmers, kayakers, pleasure boats, sailing vessels, and ferry boats all share the same water in the area near East End Beach. On the left side of the train, up the hill, is Portland's Eastern Promenade Park. This 68-acre public park was constructed in segments, beginning in 1836 through 1934. It was designed designed by the Olmsted brothers, who designed roadways in the Great Smoky Mountains and Acadia National Parks, Atlanta's Piedmont Park, university campuses, residential neighborhoods, and entire park systems in cities including Cleveland and Seattle. Today, the Eastern Promenade is known for its excellent views of Casco Bay. This park is also home to a variety of food trucks during the warmer months, and Portland's 4th of July fireworks are launched from here every year. On a clear day in the far distance, you may be able to see a tall chimney stack. This is part of the Lyman Power Station on Cousins Island. The power station is typically only used for periods of high demand. Closer to the end of the Maine narrow gauge rail line is Macworth Island. If you exit the train during our brief stop, you may be able to get a good view of this island directly across the bay from us. But during European settlement, it was gifted to its namesake, Arthur Macworth, in 1631. In 1885, the island was purchased by local businessman and philanthropist James Baxter, father of Percival Baxter, who would become the 53rd governor of Maine and a courageous early leader in the fight against racism. In 1943, Governor Baxter donated the island to the state of Maine in order to establish a school for the deaf. The Governor Baxter School for the Deaf still operates to this day. The island also hosts a state park that is open to the public with a beautiful perimeter walkway. These are just a few of the sites along our route on Casco Bay. One last site that you'll see at the end of our line is the burned remains of the Grand Trunk Railway swing bridge over Portland's Back Cove. In the days when our rail line was a standard gauge railroad, this bridge used to rotate like a clock. When the bridge was in its oldest position, trains would be able to travel over the bridge and go north to Montreal. When a boat would need to get through the waterway, the bridge would rotate to its open position. The bridge was destroyed by a fire in 1984. No cause was ever officially determined, but many in the community suspect arson. The bridge is now left permanently in its open position, as trains no longer need to cross the Back Cove. The bridge used to span the entire entrance to the Back Cove, but most of the bridge was removed by the state in 2020. All that remains now is the middle section of the bridge. Casco Bay is full of fascinating history. When our train reaches the end of the Maine narrow gauge line, we'll take a pause for a few minutes. You will have the opportunity to meet the train crew and ask questions about Portland, our history, and the train on which we ride today. And don't be shy. We love sharing our knowledge. You may also exit the train to take in a view once we come to a stop. Before you stand up, please wait for the conductor to announce that it is safe to stand and exit the train. After a few minutes, the conductor will call out, "All aboard!" when it is time for us to return to our seats for the return trip. Relax and enjoy the rest of your ride with us. New England than most other ports on the eastern seaboard. This made Portland an attractive departure port for ships heading to England. The St. Lawrence and Atlantic Railroad became part of the Grand Trunk Railway in 1853. You can still see part of the Grand Trunk Railroad station building today. It's located on the corner of India and Franklin Streets, just down from where you get off the train and back at the station. It's currently a bank branch. To reach the mainland on their way to Canada, all trains had to cross Portland's Back Cove over the swing bridge next to where we stopped our train. This is the bridge that was destroyed by a fire in 1984. And when the bridge burned down, the Grand Trunk Railway closed this part of their line into Portland. At the time, business had been drying up in downtown Portland, and it wasn't worth it to the railroad to fix the bridge. The Grand Trunk abandoned its route into downtown. For most of their history, the tracks on which we're on today would have been standard gauge, meaning that there is 4 feet 8 1/2 inches of distance between the two steel rails on which the train rides. This specific distance was selected as the international standard in the late 1800s. Most railroads in the United States, Canada, Great Britain, and Europe run trains that ride on standard gauge tracks. The spacing of 4 feet 8 1/2 inches is chosen as the international standard gauge owing to its history dating back to ancient Rome. The ancient Romans built their their chariots and wagons with a standard width of 4 feet 8.5 inches between the two wheels. When the Romans colonized England, they built roads to fit their chariots and wagons. Some of these roads have remained in use throughout Great Britain since the 1st century AD. Trains were first developed in England in the early 1800s. They ran on tracks that were designed to fit in the old Roman roads, 4 feet 8.5 inches. Not all early railroad companies in the United States and Great Britain at this time built tracks to the same width, but by the late 1800s, this distance had become an international standard. The term narrow gauge refers to any set of tracks whose rails are placed closer together than 4 feet 8.5 inches. By placing the rails closer together, trains are able to take sharper turns, handle going up and down steep hills easier, and usually will cost half as much to build a narrow gauge railroad compared to building a standard gauge railroad. Just as it was less expensive to construct a narrow gauge railroad, it was just as cheap to operate it compared to standard gauge. The railroads had to buy less land and materials to build a narrow gauge line. The smaller trains that ran on narrow gauge tracks used a lot less fuel and water. Because of their advantage in challenging landscapes, narrow gauge railroads were commonly found in hills, mountains, and forests where the major railroads wanted to build, but found it too expensive to construct a standard gauge line. In the case of Maine, the rocky landscape and numerous hills in the interior of the state had prevented the standard gauge railroad companies from constructing many lines to reach the state's remote interior. Although railroads like Grand Trunk and Maine Central did run through the state, the majority of Maine remained unserved by railroads, and the state's economy remained underdeveloped. The rocky hills and challenging landscape made it too costly for the railroads to go where they needed to go. A railroad promoter at the time named George Mansfield sensed an opportunity. Mansfield had been to the country of Wales, where the landscape closely resembled the land and rocky conditions in northern England. One railroad there had found that by placing the rails very close together in an unusually small, narrow gauge, they could quite profitably operate a railroad in a challenging landscape. Mansfield felt the same concept could be brought back to New England. Mansfield went to Massachusetts and started America's first two-foot gauge railroad, called the Billerica and Bedford Railroad. Unfortunately, it was not successful. The railroad had proven too cost-effective for its own good. The line was built cheaply, leading to many accidents, and the railroad missed many opportunities to create profit. That line opened and closed in less than 1 year. Despite the setback, Mansfield was convinced the concept of the two-foot narrow gauge railroad was successful, even if his first railroad company was not. Mansfield decided to apply the concept for a second time, this time in Maine. He developed the Sandy River Railroad, which ran in Franklin County. The idea was for the two-foot Sandy River Railroad to connect with the standard gauge Maine Central Railroad in Farmington and be able to go further into the woods and hills than Maine Central wanted to build. The Sandy River opened in 1879 and was highly successful, carrying passengers, lumber, mail, freight, and supplies. In its peak, the railroad operated over 112 miles of narrow gauge track. It was the largest and most successful of America's two-foot railroads. Other two-foot railroads were built in Maine in the late 1800s, inspired by the Sandy River success. These included the Wiscasset, Waterville, and Farmington Railroad, the Bridgeton and Saco River Railroad, and the Kennebec Central and the Monson Railroad. Although two-foot narrow gauge railroads did operate in some other parts of the country, no other state had nearly as many two-foot track miles or operational complexity compared to Maine. Maine was especially unique in the United States in this regard. By the late 1920s, railroad fortunes all over the country began to decline. Advancements in automobile technology began to make railroads obsolete. One by one, most railroads went out of business. As improved roads, cars, and trucks began to creep into rural Maine, the narrow gauge railroads began to lose out on competition. The cost of running a railroad was too much to bear, even as the two-foot railroads tried scaling back or experimenting with newer, cheaper cranberry farmer in South Carver, Massachusetts, was looking to construct a small railroad to serve his property. He felt that the narrow gauge locomotives and freight cars from the forests and hills of Maine would be perfect for his little farm railroad. This farmer's name was Ellis D. Atwood, and he played a crucial role in saving Maine's two-foot railroad history from extinction. Atwood purchased all the remaining two-foot equipment that he could find and immediately put it to use on his farm railroad. He called his railroad the Edaville Railroad, named after his own initials, EDA. Sometimes he would attach a passenger car or two to the work train and offer rides for his neighbors. Interest in riding the unique small train quickly spread, and Atwood capitalized by turning his personal farm railroad into a tourist-centered operation. Atwood converted most of the two-foot freight cars he had acquired into passenger cars and set about running trains on a 5-mile scenic loop around his property. And for the next 50 years, Maine's surviving two-foot trains enjoyed a second life at the Edaville Railroad, carrying generations of visitors on a scenic, old-fashioned train ride. Unfortunately, rising property taxes in South Carver forced this version of the Edaville Railroad out of business in early 1992. Atwood had long since passed, and his successor, George Bartholomew, had placed the railroad collection for sale. Despite the sadness of the business closing, Bartholomew felt it was important that the collection remain together wherever it ended up. A group of concerned citizens in Maine got together and formed a brand new narrow gauge railroad company and museum for the purpose of buying the collection from Edaville and bringing it back to Maine. This was the start of the Maine Narrow Gauge Railroad Company, made to operate and preserve narrow gauge trains for the enjoyment and education of the public. Maine Narrow Gauge acquired the Grand Trunk Railway right-of-way in Portland, which had been abandoned since the Back Cove Bridge was destroyed in 1984. They then put rails back in, but this time spaced the rails 2 feet apart in order to run the narrow gauge trains. Since 1993, Maine Narrow Gauge has continued running steam and diesel 2-foot narrow gauge trains, keeping this very unique piece of history alive for future generations to enjoy. Whether you enjoy Maine history, or trains, or a scenic ride along Portland's waterfront, we are proud to offer a unique piece of living history. Please feel free to visit our website, mainenarrowgauge.org, to find our schedule of daily train rides, pumpkin trains, and the magical Polar Express train ride. You can also find information about our collection of locomotives and cars, and learn more about Maine's history of narrow gauge railroading. If you enjoyed your train ride, consider making a donation. You can do so in our gift shop, or you can donate online at mainenarrowgauge.org. Maine Narrow Gauge is a non-profit organization that exists to showcase our special piece of history. Your support makes all of our operations possible. Our journey today is nearing its end, so please remain seated until the train has come to a full and complete stop. When the conductor announces that it is safe to do so, please exit the train carefully onto the street side of the train. And on behalf of all of us, thank you for riding with Maine Narrow Gauge today. We are so grateful for your support.
Alrighty folks, you are cleared to disembark the train on the street side. Please watch your step and have a wonderful day.
Get money, they pay a 40-minute ride and then delay it 10 minutes. You have to delay it 40 minutes.
So ayun mga boss, tapos na yung ating train rides. So scenic viewing tayo, 40 minutes. So ayun lang nakikita natin. Siyempre ganun pa rin, maraming salamat rin sa nanonood dyan. At shout out na rin sa ating lahat mga boss. This is Jim Lauro Mix Vlogs. Kita-kits tayo sa susunod. Ciao.